Right, guys, you've been asking for it, and here it is, a guide on Earth-Wind Hybrid. It's the setup that I've been maining for the better part of this year, at least, quite a while. You've been asking for it in the comments, and here is my take on how to run Earth-Wind Hybrid for patch 2.4. This build does extremely well against pretty much everything. Yeah, everything. It's solid against Shadow, it does very well against Holy, it wins pretty much every 101. It's got wounds, it's got high sustain, it's got an extremely high front-loaded damage. There are very few things that can counter this setup, and most of it requires 3 of the new Tower of Knowledge skills, so that's quite limited. It wins pretty much every 1-on-1, it even wins against the Earth Khan March. However, I will say that the Earth Khan setup does perform slightly better against pure holy setups than this hybrid. So what I do is I keep both Charles and Khan on a 2nd or a 3rd march, so I can quickly swap formations if I'm against a particular strong Holy Whale. Basically, fighting Holy with this setup is either you're fighting someone who knows how to counter your hybrid build, then you can swap into Khan Charles, or you're fighting someone who does not know how to counter it, and you'll win with a hybrid. So the build overview. Like I said, this guide is on the Earth-Wind Hybrid. One thing that I want to get rid of right up front is kind of the dragon thing, because this build has been around for a while, and it used to be that you should run it with the Wind Dragon, simply because it yields slightly higher stats and had speed procs and stuff like that. But that's not the case anymore. As of patch 2.4, they changed the Wind Dragon into being uniquely affecting wind immortals. That means our Alexander does not get the buffs that he needs, and as such, the Wind Dragon is kind of useless. What you want to do instead is the Earth Dragon, so we just swap the elemental affinity towards 3 Earth, 2 Wind. For special talents, it's very enticing to go for the leech talents, but you shouldn't. For some reason, it doesn't really proc, and it doesn't really provide any damage nor healing anything. I'm not sure if it's broken or just has in. I don't really know what's happening, but it doesn't really perform at all. So what you want to do is run attack speed, which is perfect for the setup as well, since both Alex and Hannibal Barca scales extremely well with attack speed, and this entire build revolves around attack speed. So diving a bit further into the build, it does kind of look like something that wouldn't work, but trust me, it does work. We're running Earth-Wind Hybrid, and we're taking advantage of the high physical damage output that we have from Alexander and Hannibal Barca up front. We run Zenobia in the back, providing sustainability, and she, with her unique, she provides extremely high healing as well as a nice attack speed buff. You really want to get that. Keeps our frontliners topped on them on troops, and keeps them there for quite a while. In addition to that, we have backing from Emperor Qin in the back. Qin provides wounds, which is obviously an amazing debuff. If you've seen anything I've done this far, you'll know that wounds is by far the most powerful debuff in the game. It is why Holy is beatable. So obviously we want that, but in addition to the wounds, we're also getting attack speed, and with this unique, we're adding additional cleave to the setup, which works perfectly. There are a few combinations of immortals and passives that are able to counter this setup. I won't go into much detail with this, maybe I'll do another one. What I will say is that most of you are probably not even going to face it, since it requires at least 3 of the paywall Tower of Knowledge skills and only really works on full holy marches. So if you're up against one of the 10 biggest whales in the game, then maybe, but other than that, you're probably not going to be facing this. In essence, this is a build where Alex and Hannibal is being buffed. Like I said, we're using Quinn and Xeno for attack speed buffs. We're doing passives for attack speed buffs. We're doing Dragon Talents for attack speed buffs. All in all, we're doing massive damage on Alexander and on Hannibal Barca. So basically, down to the nitty gritty, I want to highlight a few things. Like on Xeno, who you do kind of want her unique, like I said before. That in combination with Berserk is going to provide quite a bit of attack speed and a very high leech. Every time you hit an attack, which you will be quite often on Alex and Barca, since we're boosting attack speed, you're going to leech a very high amount of healing back, gaining troops. That's extremely important and something you should prioritize. This, in general, the unique artifacts are a thing for this build. It's not a cheap build, and for it to really work well, you're going to want uniques on at least Xeno, Alex, and Barca. Barca's used to be free to play, so if you have it from back then very nice, but the Alexander one is particularly expensive since you want to upgrade that. For Xeno, it's doable because you just want the unique effect. We don't really care what kind of stats it rolls. Getting a bonus is nice, getting dodge is nice, but it's not a must-have. You want the unique effect. That's a must-have. Same goes for Kin. Well, not same, but you don't want dodge. You do want dodge. You do want a bonus if you can, but it's not extremely important. If you're able to get the unique, it will improve your march quite significantly either way. But the Alex one makes it particularly expensive to main the setup. That being said, it is still relatively cheap as a setup, since it's able to take on the biggest holy and shadow whales in the game. It's far from being as expensive as that, and performs very well. One more thing that's an added thing of running this, in addition to being a cheap way to beat the biggest players, it's also a team that works particularly well as a main or a second. You know, it has a very nice synergy, since we're running some pretty I want to say weird passives, but we're running some niche passives that fits into this build particular, but which are not S tier by any means for most other builds. That means that building a very powerful second march is extremely easy, and you will have 2 very powerful marches if you choose to run this as either your main or your secondary. I think that's all I want to say before we get into the actual setup. That's basically sort of the selling points of why I'm using this as my main. So diving on into the setup and the Tower of Knowledge passives, I'm gonna go over each and every immortal, starting with Alex, going through Barca, Xeno, and Kin, figuring out what passives you want to load out and what kind of options do you have for different kinds of enemies. Starting with Alexander the Great, you want to have Cleave, Duel Master, and something else. On Alexander, there's actually quite a lot of swapping to do, because as a baseline, you want to do Cleave, Duel Master, and combo. But sometimes you want to swap that around a bit. So basically, Alexander's our main damage dealer, so we want him to sustain his troop count even against enemies with wound debuffs. So when you're fighting other Quins, other Genghis Khan, then you need to have Duel Master in here. But if you're not fighting against wounds, like if the whales you're playing against are not clever enough to build wound marches, well then get rid of Duel Master and run Heavenly Thunder instead. You'll run Cleave, Heavenly Thunder, and Combo, because you're getting extremely high attack speed on Alexander, and all 3 abilities are gonna proc like crazy. However, if you are against wounds, you want to swap out Heavenly Thunder for Duel Master. Not always do you want to swap out Heavenly Thunder though. Another tricky thing, because if you're up against a fire setup, something with squishy backliners that deal a lot of damage, then you kind of want Heavenly Thunder over Combo, because you don't. The seconds it takes you to nuke a Hippo or William or Trajan in front of the Sion or the Wu, that's gonna take not long, but still long enough for the fire backline to deal damage. So if you're up against a big main fire, you want to run Cleave, and if there's wounds in there, Duel Master. If not, Combo, and then always Heavenly Thunder. If you, however, are up against a mirror setup, it's an entirely third case. In that case, you want to run, you need Duel Master, because mirrors, you got wounds, but you also want to run a Combo instead of, you want to run Absorb instead of Combo. Giving you that extra leech makes your Alex actually win his one-on-one with his enemy. Absorb heals an absurd amount on Alexander, and you can really use that to your advantage in a mirror lineup. So there's kind of 3 different ways of running this guy, and you really do need to be aware. As a baseline, I like to run Cleave, Duel Master, and Combo, and then sort of swap into Heavenly Thunder and at will, as I need it. If I never play against wounds, take out Duel Master. If I play against fire backliners, take out either Duel Master, or if it's a Fire Khan, take out Combo. So again, on Barca, you're running Anger, Death Breath, and X, because Hannibal Barca has a few options as well. You want to run Anger to boost his damage output. That's plain and simple, pretty straightforward. You want to combine that with Death Breath, adding damage to his already quite insane Cleave. But for the last spot, you have a few different options. First of all, as a default, I like to run Shelter. That always provides decent healing and does very well. Sustains your setup quite well. Especially fighting against Holy, it performs extremely well and is, in my opinion, a must-have. Secondly, if you're up against a big nuke team, again like a fire main, a well-built fire main, then you want to run Malice instead of Shelter to reduce the amount of crits taken. Lastly, third option is against enemy teams with access to control effects. If you're up against an enemy Earth Dragon or a control-centric lightning build, then you want to run Fighting Master in this last spot. Fighting Master making you immune to control effects. That basically means that both your DPSs are completely immune and will melt everything. So for the backliners, we got Xeno as our main support. She's running Coercion, Blessing of Defense, and Blessing of War. For Xeno, you want to run Coercion to use her aura slot. We're using a lot of auras, and we need to run one on both Xeno and Qin. Doesn't really matter which way, but I'm doing Coercion here. Coercion itself is a must-have for this setup. We're running pure physical damage, and we need accuracy to close the hit gap. We want to cap out on hit rating, or whatever it's called in this game, or at least get as near to hit cap as possible. If you have completed Dragon Talents 100% like I have, and you never fight against Misleading or Holy with Manco, then you can skip Coercion, because you will have more than 700 accuracy from the Dragon the Dragon Talents itself, that is enough. But if you're ever fighting just a Holy Manco or someone using Misleading, then you do want to run Coercion. So I'm pretty much just always leaving it in there, because let's face it, if you're running this at endgame with max Dragon Talents, you're fighting Holies. Anyway, if you're not, and if you want to do something different, then Malice or Misleading is options for this spot. Malice against crit mage enemies, and Misleading against physical enemies. The last two spots you want to do Graces in. We're running both Blessing of Defense and Blessing of War. We are doing that to boost the damage and the survivability as much as we can for the beginning of the fight. In essence, we're pumping up our Barca and our Alex to get so far ahead in the one-on-one game and the cleave game in the very beginning of the fight that your enemy frontliners will never recover and will fall very quickly. Once you melt your enemy frontliners, it's just a question of time before the backliners fall. The exception being fire, where you want to do slightly more cleave to drop all 4 immortals at the same time. Lastly, we've got Emperor Kin, I don't know, Berserk, Oakengard, and Blessing of Speed. Kin also has an aura. Team needs Berserk aura to boost its attack speed and its life leech. It's extremely powerful on Alexander and Barca and is a must-have for the setup. We're scaling attack speed like nothing else, and this is where both Berserk and Blessing of Speed truly belong. We're combining both Berserk, Blessing of Speed with Xeno's Unique and Kin's Ultimate, and are boosting our attack speed on Alexander and Hannibal Barca to the absolute max. Also means if you are running this hybrid build, you want to do rapid bonus on the unique artifacts for Alex and Barca. You want to have rapid over Iron Will. Usually you want to have Iron Will, but for this particular setup I do prefer rapid. For the last spot, we're running Oakengard. It's a mandatory passive for pretty much every main, as long as the physical damage meta reigns supreme, which doesn't seem like there's going to be an end to. Oakengard will remain a must-have talent for any main march. So that's the setup. That's the Earth-Wind hybrid. That's the small changes you want to do. This is the default loadout. This is what I usually have on, and then once I'm fighting, silly people without wounds, I'm swapping out Duel Master for Heavenly Thunder, and for those particular nasty mirror setups, I'm taking out Malice for Fighting Master, and I'm taking out Combo for Absorb. But other than that, small changes to make based on what your enemy is. As a default, this setup will always do very well. That's it for this guide. I hope it was what you guys expected. If you have more questions, or if I was a bit unclear on the scenarios for when do you want to swap into what, do hit me up on in the comments on Discord, whatever. As always, please do subscribe to the channel. I consistently release new content here on the IK channel and on the official IK Wiki website. Links are in the description. On these channels you can find guides from everything in IK, from events to talents, passives, finished builds, and game mechanics. With that, I'm gonna leave you, and as always, thank you for watching, and see you for the next one.